Alright, so hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I don't know about you, but data is starting to get a little bit touchy, shall we say. With all the astro images and all the YouTube videos and all my other normal documents spread around all over the place, I'm starting to get a little bit twitchy with regards to losing data. Now all my key documents and things I do keep up on various cloud services. So I'm not too concerned about them, but the volume of data that we gather when we're doing all the YouTube stuff and the astrophotography images and all the associated data with that, it's starting to get to the point now where if I took an NVMe hard drive failure, I'd pretty much lose everything. Now I did recently at the beginning of the year upgrade the NVMe, or added a second NVMe SSD into the computer to give me 2 terabytes of storage for all my astrophotography image data. However, that's already 50% full this year, and I do have excuse me, two 2 terabyte drives in the machine as well for holding the archive of all my YouTube content and various other software for programming and things like that. So I was starting to get to the point where it was time I needed to do something about it, and I decided it was time to get a NAS drive. Trying to push all this data up onto the cloud would become very expensive very quickly, and plus we've also got to factor in how long it takes to push data up into the cloud. With slow internet connections and things, unless I could get my hands on a really fast high bandwidth connection, it doesn't really make sense at the moment here in Cyprus. So at the beginning of the video there you saw I had these 4 hard disks. These drives are actually quite a few years old. I've had them in a surplus network video recorder that I had back in the UK. They weren't doing anything, so I thought, well, I'll salvage them, take them over, try them, and at least they'll maybe get me going. So I've got 4 terabyte drives for a total capacity of obviously 16 terabytes. And in addition to that, I've also got a number of 2 terabyte drives. So I've got 3 of them here. These are Seagate drives as well. And I've got 3 of them on the desk here, and I've got 2 that are being used inside the computer at the moment. So what I plan to do is to create 2 separate data volumes on a NAS, one for all the astrophotography stuff and another one for all my other general data storage. So to facilitate that, I obviously went back on into the internet and had a look at all the current sort of NAS drives available on the market. Now I previously have owned NAS drives. I had a QNAP TES509 Plus, I think it was. Back in 2009, that lasted quite a number of years, although it died in transit from Cyprus to from the UK to Cyprus. The hard disk, not the hard disk, the power supply and the motherboard, something gave up in transit. It obviously got battered around in a suitcase, so it didn't survive. It was at its end of life anyway. It wasn't supported any longer by QNAP, so I wasn't too fussed about that. And that's where all the 5 2 terabyte drives came out of. And then I've also had a Netgear NV something, another NV Plus Ready or something like that. That's still in the UK. It's got 4 1.5 terabyte drives in it that I just kept for stuff when I was in the UK, but I no longer use that either. But I've left that there. And so yeah, the Netgear one was pretty rough and ready, very consumer based. The QNAP was excellent, never had any problems with it. I had it in a RAID 5 configuration, and yeah, I did have a drive failure on there once and swapped them out, or I did something, upgraded the capacities. I think that's what I did. I went from the 1.5s to the 2 terabytes when I ran out of space, and all the RAID upgrade with the disk migration all worked flawlessly, and the remote access into the machine and everything worked perfectly. So as I said, I've salvaged the 4 terabyte drives, and I've got the 5 2 terabyte drives, and after having a look I settled on going with the Synology brand this time. I thought I'll give them a try. There's had some new drives coming out on the market this year, and the reviews on various of the NAS channels on YouTube are very positive. So what I've elected to go for is the Synology DS1522 Plus. So this is a 5-bay drive, and you'll be saying, well, hang on a minute, you've already got 4 4TB drives and 5 2TB drives. I ain't going to fit into a 5-bay drive, and you'd be absolutely correct. So that's where I have also purchased the expansion unit, which is the DX517 or something like that. So that is another 5-bay drive expansion unit, and the main NAS box, the DS1522 Plus, will actually support 2 DX517s for a total of 15 drives across the unit. Now, I did have a look at the other options of going for larger 8 bays or 12 bays or rack mount, but when you start getting up into that territory, it starts to get very expensive, and the cost was quite prohibitive. So I elected to go with this combination up here. So on that note, let's get into it and see what we've got. Okay, so you join me down here on the floor, and we'll start off with the 1522. So this is the sort of the master unit, 5-bay NAS drive, as I say. It looks like it's a box within a box. Here we've just got a power cable, a European one, so I'll find an adapter here for Cyprus, and it comes with 2 Ethernet cables, drive keys, a bunch of screws, and a large power brick. So that's everything in there. And the main NAS unit itself, it's quite a compact unit. There we go. As you can see here, we've got the 5 drive bays, power button, a bunch of status LEDs, USB 3 port on the back. We've got 4 1 gigabit Ethernet connections. Now this compartment here is actually an upgrade option. You can install a 10 gigabit network adapter in here, should I ever find the need to upgrade my networks further. I've got a couple of eSATA ports for the expansion bays, and then obviously the power connection box and a couple of fans on the back there. Underneath, the unit also has a couple of these bays which support NVMe SSDs, which you can use for read-write caches. So it will take 2 NVMe caches, and depending on what type of files you're using and your workload, whether you're doing small data files or regularly doing database transactions and things like that, you may gain a speed advantage. But with working on large image files that we do in Astrophotography and the large video files, I don't think, going by the guide on Synology's website, that I would gain any advantage from installing SSDs at this time. So I'm going to leave them out of the equation for the moment. So that's the DS1522 Plus. Let's put it on the table. Okay, so much the same setup, a box within a box. Again, you get power cable, a bunch of screws, and the disc lock keys. And then inside the enclosure, there is a eSATA cable, and yeah, just an eSATA cable. And here again, a compact unit, the DX517. And there we go. quite straightforward. We've just simply got a power button, status LED and alert, and an eSATA connection light, and then the drive bays are all similar to the other one. So there's no other functionality on here apart from your power cable in the back and a couple of fans, and obviously the eSATA connection for connecting back to the main unit. And that's that. So let's get them all set up. Okay, so I've got the two boxes on top of each other. The DX517 is sitting at the bottom, and the DX1522 Plus is on the top. We've got the eSATA cable just connecting the two units together. The power cables going in on the left hand side, and then I've got the two Ethernet cables going into port 1 and port 2. Now with the DX1522 Plus, I believe you can do link aggregation and bond these two connections together, and I know my router that I've got on my desk here for the office here supports link bonding as well, so that'll probably benefit if I've got both the observatory laptops pushing data across the Wi-Fi link to the house, and also the my computer, for example, talking to the NAS boxes at the same time, so we won't get as much of a bottleneck on the connection. So that's everything round the back. Turn on the expansion and then turn on the main unit. I'll leave that to boot up. Hopefully we'll see some activity here shortly, and then we'll connect into the web console and see what it's doing. Alright, so here we are on the desktop, and this is the management console for my router, and I've opened up the DHCP server, and I can see that there's both the network connections for the Synology NAS have appeared on the dynamic address list at IP 64 and 65. So if we hop over to Google Chrome or your browser of choice, whatever that may be, we'll pull up 64, and we can see the Synology console is loading, and no drives are detected because obviously I haven't put any in yet. So that's what we'll do now. We will pull out the drives, 4 drives, and I don't know if this is toolless or it's screwed or what. So here's one of the drive caddies, and it looks like these just pull out. And if I take one of the drives, that's the right ones. So the drive caddies have got little anti-vibration mounts that hold in the disc, and I hope we're getting the right way around. Slot them in. The holes all line up nicely, and I'll just pop the drive tray back in. There we go, one disc mounted in its caddy. So let's insert that into the drive and see what happens. I'll hit the refresh. You hear the drive spinning up. It sees disk 1 on the unit. Excellent. Alright. So let me continue, and I will fill the other 3 drive caddies with the 4 terabyte drives, and we'll get them installed. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so that's 4 drives installed in the unit, so let's hit the device info. What does it tells me? It just gives the IP address and serial number, nothing's there, and we'll install. So it wants to install the latest version of the Disk Station Manager, which is Synology's OS. So we can do that. Let's do next. All data deleted, that's fine. All I know that's on those drives is old NVR recordings of security cameras, so yep, quite happy with that. We'll leave it to do its thing and we'll come back however long that'll take. Alright, so that took 6 minutes approximately from starting the process. The unit downloaded everything it needed to download, it configured the drive, and it's rebooted the machine, and now it's sitting at this welcome screen. So let's hit start. So I need to give everything a name, so I'll get this all set up. So I'll just call it NAS Office. I'll create an admin account. I'll change all these later. I'll save the password to Google Chrome. So it says automatically install important DSM and package updates. Yep. That says to go with the recommended one, so I'll go with the recommended one. I'll skip the Synology account. Device analytics. We'll leave that off just now. Okay. So here we are, it looks like the home page of the Synology DSM. And we can now create a storage pool. So we're going to use SHR2, which requires, we're going to use SHR1, standard HSR, which is 4 drives. One of them will be used for redundancy. So this SHR is Synology's hybrid RAID, which allows the machine to use drives of different volumes, sizes, and any spare drives are left as out of the equation, but it seems to be recommended more over standard RAID options, which you can also see here, all your standard RAID configurations. So we'll just go with SHR, and the storage pool description, I don't need to enter anything there. So we're now going to select the 4 drives, which will give me an estimated capacity of 10.9 usable terabytes. It's warning me that the drives are not on Synology's compatibility list, but that's not a problem. And we'll allocate the full maximum capacity available, and we'll use the BTRF file system, and we will apply. All the data will be raised, which we know, and we'll just continue, and we'll leave it to do its thing, and I'll come back when it's ready. In fact, I won't need to come back when it's ready, as it says it's ready. Alright, so the drives are full, 4 drives are there, are healthy, and it's doing volume 1 optimization in the background, so everything is looking good. And there we can see on the overview page the NAS box with the 4 drives and the expansion unit, which is sitting empty at the moment. Alright, so it's still chuntering away in the background, so what I'm going to do now is go into the control panel, and here we can see shared folders. Obviously need to create a shared folder to allow it to be seen on the network, and create a shared folder, and we'll just call it Astrophotography, and we'll enable the recycle bin. So I found this beneficial on my previous NAS boxes where I had the internal recycle bin enabled, so if somebody deletes a file off the network, it goes into the recycle bin for a period, and this has recovered so many of our photos and things when the kids were growing up, when the wife accidentally deleted everything off her laptop one day. But fortunately it was all or she drained it off her network share, but fortunately it was all recovered from the recycle bin. Alright, so that's the share, Astrophotography. Now you don't want to encrypt the folder, I'm not worried about that. Enable data checksum for advanced data integrity. And it cannot be modified once the shared folder is created. I don't know if we need to worry about that. And I can always move around the data after once I sort it out myself. Okay, so there's the user accounts. Now, admin and guest are currently disabled, and there's the account that I created on startup with full read-write access. So that should be now the shared folder created. So what my plan is to do is to move all the data that's on the two 2 terabyte drives that I've got in that computer onto the NAS box temporarily. That'll allow me to then strip out those 2 terabyte drives so I can get the full 5 terabyte drive set ready, and then I'll put them into the NAS box. So what I'll do now is I'll map a network drive on Windows Explorer. So if we just go map network drive, it's spare drive letters, W is the next free one, and we will hopefully be able to do NAS Office Astrophotography. Connect using different credentials. So this will be hopefully we can remember those credentials, and there we have the network drive created and mapped. So I should, in theory, be able to start moving data. So if I go to the stuff folder, and here's all my shortcut projects, and in there I've got all my various videos that I've created relating to the astrophotography stuff, quad biking and various other things, so I can move all this data across. So if I just select everything apart from that dump file, I don't know what that is, and we'll just do a drag and drop and see what happens. So currently it's pushing around 100 megabytes, sorry, 110, bouncing around, obviously depending on the size of the files. So it's 561 gigabytes of data coming off of this drive, and it's going to take around 2 hours to transfer everything. So I'll leave it to it, and we'll catch up with you later. Okay, so we're about 20 odd minutes into doing the file transfer, and I just thought I'd check on the system resources and see exactly how the unit's performing. So the first thing I had a look at was the management console for my wireless, or the router in my office. Ethernet port 2 is connected to the computer, and Ethernet port 7 is connected to the NAS box, and we can see that we're fully saturating the network connection there around about 900, or it's just basically bouncing around the 1 gigabit per second. So that's where the bottleneck is on my network on the computer, which is fine, I can deal with that. And then if we go across to the console for the NAS box, we can see the data is starting to come through, and it's starting to populate all my Astro video folders. It's decided to do them first, and it's sitting around about 110 megabytes per second, which would correlate with the network speed. And in terms of the performance of the NAS box, CPU utilization is only around about 15%, the memory is around 6%, and the network speed and the data write speeds to the drives are all looking good around 100 plus megabytes per second as expected. So everything is going so far swimmingly. We'll just continue to leave it to copy. I've got the 2 drives I need to transfer, so my Y drive and my Z drive, and I've created both those copy operations in Windows Explorer. I paused the second one because there's a lot of small files in there, and that significantly impacts the transfer speeds. So I'll leave the main transfer to finish, so I simply just paused it. and left the main transfer to continue, and then once it's done I'll pick up the second drive. But that's all set up and doing its thing, and then once that's finished all its transfers, I'll check all the data. It looks like it's all there on the NAS box, and then we'll proceed to pull the two drives out of the computer that I'm transferring into the NAS. So we'll catch you in a bit. Alright, so that's been a little over 2 hours to transfer all the data. So here we can see in the control panel the two drives, so I actually moved the files as well after it completed, and we've got the two original drives that's inside the machine that I'm moving all my data off of, and everything there is looking good. So what I need to do now is I'm going to shut this computer down, and I'm going to remove the two original drives. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to shut down and we'll take it from there. Alright, so that went fairly painless. So that's me now got all 5 of the 2 terabyte drives put into the drive caddies, and the computer is obviously booted up fine, as you can see, and I've reopened the console, the management console for the NAS, and I've gone on to the storage manager, and here we can see the NAS box and the expansion unit, and the storage pool for volume 1 is sitting at 705 gigabytes. So that was the first load of data that I transferred off of the 2 drives that were originally labelled X and Y, or whatever it was, Y and Z, on the computer. So they have now obviously vanished. So we've just got the original NVMe SSD, the main system disk, drive C. I've got the NAS with the copies of the data from the 2 drives that we've just pulled, and then my other NVMe SSD, which has got some astrophotography stuff that will eventually move across onto the first storage volume that we created with the 4 terabyte drives. So the next thing to do is now mount these 5 drives into the NAS, and we'll build a volume and think about start moving data around once everything's ready. Okay, so let's head over to the expansion unit. Well, there's no going back now, as all the data is about to be wiped, so I hope everything is copied okay. If it's not, well, so be it. So now we'll head back into the management console and configure those drives. Alright, so here we are back in the storage manager on the NAS console, and we can see the expansion unit, the disks after I inserted them. It took a few seconds, and then the Synology unit obviously started to identify there was new disks, and one by one their lights came on, and now they're showing up in each of the units as being not initialized. And here we can see on all the 5 new drives, each with a capacity, a raw capacity of 1.8 terabytes there. So what I need to do now is we need to create a new storage pool, and we're going to use another SHR. So this is for single drive failure, and I'm just going to call this general data, and we're going to use the 5 uninitialized drives that's showing up on the 517 expansion unit, and this will give us an estimated capacity of 7.2 terabytes. Again, it gives me the warning that these drives are not compatible, or they're not on the compatibility list, and that's okay. We'll just continue. Alright, so there we go, and we will apply, and it's going to tell me that all data will be erased. So this is the point of no return, so whatever data was on those Y and Z drives is now going to vanish and hopefully it's all on the NAS in the transfer that we did earlier. Certainly there was no errors raised or no skips or anything like that, so I'll trust it. And we'll let it do its thing. So storage pool's up to storage pool number 2 with general data. It's optimizing in the background, and we can now confirm it's got SHR with data protection for OneDrive fault tolerance. So on this storage pool, we're going to create a new volume. This is obviously for the data. So we're going to allocate the maximum amount of data, and I'm just going to call this again general data. Again, we'll use the BTRFS file system and apply that, and it's doing its thing. So it's creating the file system and it's doing that in the background. So now if I go back to the overview, we can see everything's looking good. We've got volume 1 and volume 2. So if I go back to shared folders, there we go. So we want to create a new share folder, and we're going to be using volume 2, and we're going to call this, again, I'll just call it general data, and we'll enable the recycle bin again. So that's the share created. So if we go into Windows File Explorer, again we can map another network drive. So I'll eventually change the drive names, but at the moment, map network drive, I'll put this back to Z again. And this is NAS Office. Yeah, there we go. So there we have it. We've got the new general data share, and we've got the new W drive share. So now I can start moving the data around and get all my storage back to where I need it to be. So one of the other things I'm going to do is I'll create a couple of folders on here. At the moment you can see these are my this OBO laptop, OBO 1 image captures and OBO 2 image captures. These are two network mappings across to the laptop, the laptops in the observatory. So what I'll do is I'll be creating some mappings on the NAS box, and the observatory laptops can just directly store onto the NAS box, so that all the data is incoming into the NAS box. Alright, so there we have it. We've got 4 terabyte drives that I've recovered from an old NVR. They're working fine for one share. That'll be for all the astrophotography stuff. And then I've got 5 2 terabyte drives that have been recovered from various other old NASs, and that have moved around the drives and things. And 2 of them obviously recovered from this computer here. So that's all looking good. So on that note, I think we're all good to go. The only thing we could try is to move some data, but the drives are still initializing, so I'll just leave everything to stabilize and normalize before I start moving any more data around, and we'll call it quits there. So there we have it. That was the Synology DS1522 Plus 5-bay NAS, and the DX517 5-bay expansion module, again from Synology, and built all the data shares, transferred the data, set up the shared volumes and storage pools, the accounts, and everything to do with the NAS. So one other thing I'm going to look at doing is, obviously the NASs can also run packages, so various little applications and Docker containers and things like that. And one thing I'm thinking of doing is adding in a package that I was reading about yesterday for remote desktop, not into the NAS but on my network. So I've started to use Rust Desk. I'll just quickly pull it up, Rust Desk. which is an open source remote desktop platform, and I'm currently using it on the observatory. So if I open up the Rust client on here, you can see here's my Obbo Laptop 1. So this is the remote desktop one. Oh, wrong pin. And there we can see Dave's Observatory, Obbo Laptop 1 over the Rust client. And what you can do, this is using Rust Desk server in the cloud, just for your directory mappings and things like that. But you can create your own Rust server in a Docker container on the NAS box, and everything can be managed locally rather than through the cloud. So all looking good there, and again it's open source, it's free, and so far it seems to be working no problem. So this is just the Victron remote monitoring from my previous video, running on the Chrome on the browser on the laptop, and there's the desktop of the laptop machine. So all good. So I was thinking of doing a Rust Desk server Docker on the NAS box. So that's maybe something for later. Alright, so I'll leave you there. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or queries, obviously relating to the NAS box and what I've done, or any of the previous sort of IT related projects I've done on the observatory, obviously I've installed the Wi-Fi, the 6 GHz or 60 GHz Wi-Fi network, and various other things around the topic. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask any questions, and leave your comments and everything below. And if you haven't done so yet, really please do consider subscribing. It helps the channel to continue to grow, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up if you like this video. And again, we'll see you in the next one, whatever that'll be, and take care. Cheers guys, and thanks for watching.